Okay, I'm going to go over some basic concepts real quick that are really important for one, creating games, and two, just for your overall grappling experience to be effective and efficient. So starting out on the feet, one thing that is always consistent is going to be the hand fight or the grip fight, all right? So hand fighting might just be, wrist and hand fighting. Grip fighting is like everything where I'm using my hands, my arms, my head, my legs, everything to achieve certain tasks or goals. All right, so within all of that, there's two main things that we're doing all the time. We're either trying to close the distance, or we're trying to frame out the distance, or we could say close the space or fill the space. So if I'm trying to close the distance, Brayson might be momentarily trying to fill the space, making sure that I can't close the distance. And this is a constant part of the grip fight, all right? So within that, obviously if I'm here and I'm trying to grab his body, we'll say, and he puts his hands on my shoulders, I need to be able to get past the arms in order to get to the body. In order to isolate the hips, I need to get past the arms, all right? So I can do that with what we call splits and drags. Splits are when I can open the arms up off the center line, exposing the hips or other isolations. Drags are when I drag an arm across the center line to make those same exposures. Okay, so within the grip fight, we're trying to close the space or fill the space. We're going to do that by creating splits, drags, compression, or tension within our grip fighting. So when I'm creating a split, when I'm opening up the center, this is me creating tension. It's like tension is generally a push and a pull, or a pull in opposite directions. So here I'm pulling in opposite directions, creating tension, right? Here, once again, this allows me to come in. And I'll give other examples of tension. Where I'm trying to create compression. So once I get inside, I'm going to create a compression where I'm squeezing to stay tight, right? So I'm going to hand fight, grip fight. Through that, I'm trying to create splits, drags, using tension and compression. And within that, my next goal is to achieve isolations. So I'm trying to maybe isolate the hips, as you've already seen, like make a body connection. So as we're hand fighting, I'm trying to work to make a body connection or isolation, maybe a leg connection, maybe a head and arm connection. And when I say connection, I mean connection or isolation. Maybe just a straight head isolation or an arm isolation. Right? So on the feet here, I'm hand fighting, I'm grip fighting. I'm using that to create splits, drags, using tension and compression so that I can create hip isolations, leg isolations, head and arm isolations, head isolations, or just arm isolations, all right? Now, once I achieve the isolations, my next goal is to misalign or off balance my partner so that I can achieve a takedown, or on the ground, this would be, achieve an escape, a sweep, or maybe a submission hold, right? So in the example here, let's say I hand fight and I work my way into a leg isolation. All right, so I have a leg isolation. So now I want to misalign him. So I want to misalign his base, which right now is the most important thing, is his hip and his ankle. So if I just go here like this, if I just start to push his hip past his ankle, he has to realign. He has to reset that base. If I pull, he has to reset the base, right? If at any point his hip passes his ankle in any direction and he can't reset, that's when he falls over. So a quick example would just be if I'm pushing into him and I block that far leg so he can't reset, he's going to go down. So if I do that whole process like this, he goes down. And there's different ways I could do that. I could be dragging him, he's resetting, and then we block. We We stop the reset. Sometimes I can drag and I can be so heavy in the drag that he can't reset because he's too heavy on the leg. If I can get him really heavy, he can't hop and reset. Okay, so to recap real fast, we're hand fighting, we're grip fighting. And here I'm trying to either close the space or fill the space. And hand fighting is with my hands, grip fighting is with everything. You know, to fill the space sometimes I might have to use my head. If he's trying to grab my body, sometimes my head is what's filling the space. So I can continue to control the wrist and maybe get a split or a drag still. So we're trying to grip fight, to close or fill the space. That's kind of the objective. I'm gonna do that by creating splits and drags, using tension and compression. Use the splits and drags to get to isolations, isolating the hips, isolating the legs, isolating the head and arm, isolating the head, or isolating an arm, the different isolations. Then once I achieve isolations, I'm trying to misalign, get them off base so that I can create leverage for a good attack. So we saw that single leg option. Maybe we're here, maybe he puts his hand on my neck, and I move it, I drag it right there, and we go to a 2-on-1. So now that I have it, I need to try to off balance him. Look at his legs again. We're looking at the hips and the ankles. Every time I push, he has to reset. Every time I pull, he has to reset. So now maybe if I can block him here and lean down, I prevent that reset. So that I can effectively get a takedown. All right? Another thing to pay attention to is how one isolation might lead to another. Like generally, all of these isolations lead to body isolation. So maybe if I want to get body isolation, hip isolation, sometimes I got to get a leg first, and then I can rise up to the body. Or maybe I'll get the head and arm, use that to get to the body. Or maybe I'll get an arm, he puts his hand on my neck again, boom, bang, and we use that to get to the body. And sometimes, you know, the arm might lead to the leg, and so forth. All right? Now, it's kind of easy to see how this works on the feet, but this is also a constant thing down on the mat. So I'm also going to give you some examples of that. Okay, so in a scenario where I'm down and he's up, I'm following that same rule, and this applies to pretty much all guard sweeps, whether he's standing or he's down on his knees. It's the same principles. We're going to be grip fighting first, different ways, using the arms, using my feet. I'm using my connections, which the more connections, the better. You know, if I have connection here, that's great. Connection here, that's better. Connection here, even better yet. One more connection, better yet. This is going to create more leverage and make it easier for me to off balance him. So from here, I made my connections. So we hand fight, I'm working my connections to do what? Create splits and drags, all right? Now, this arm is fairly easy to drag at this point. So as I'm stretching him out here, I can drag this arm across. Now those splits and drags are gonna help me create isolations. Head and arm isolations, head isolations, hip isolations, leg isolations. Right here, this drag is gonna really help me create a head and arm isolation. And I'm doing that with my legs right now in the triangle position. So now from here, he's pretty much off base already because I pulled his shoulders in front of his hips, breaking his posture down. So here I can actually just go for the finish by creating compression. So I use the compression to get the finish in that example. All right, but we might also be here and I can misalign the hips and the ankles. So if I push right now, he can step and rebase. And if I grab this ankle, he can step and rebase with the other leg. So I had to prevent the resets, right? So I prevent the reset here 1 and prevent the reset here 2. Now he can do it, and he's gonna fall over. So I use my connections, my tension that I'm creating. Step back up again. This tension I'm creating right now with my hand fight, I'm using the push of the hip and the pull on the arm, creating tension. And this is once again misaligning him and breaking his posture down. Now I want to make sure I prevent any kind of reset when I go to off balance him. And if I can do that effectively, I'm using that tension to knock him over, right? And then we can follow up. And there's just many examples of that. Again, if I push him here, all he's gonna do is reset. But if I can prevent that reset, he's gonna fall over. All right? Okay, so in the example where I'm the one standing, I'm the one on top, we'll say his feet are on my hips right now, we're here. Essentially, I'm gonna do the same thing. We're grip fighting right here. I'm gonna use the grip fight to create tension or compression, depending on the situation, splits or drags, all right? So I can create better isolations. So from here, I might create a little bit of a split, moving that foot to the outside so his foot's no longer active, hide this one between the legs, and then block the knees. So in a scenario like this, he's gonna try to regain those feet. I wanna try to use my hands to the knees to prevent that from happening, all right? And now I'm essentially dragging a knee across slightly here so that I can pass and get to a mount position. Well, you notice how this knee has been dragged across, all right? So we're here like that. Now in this scenario, when I'm working my way to mount, splits and drags is the next thing that I'm thinking about. Okay, I'm starting to isolate the hips, but we're still gonna be hand fighting here, and I'm gonna use splits and drags to get better isolations. So as we're here, maybe I can drag this arm across here and isolate it. This is isolating the arm and the head, like so. And now, I'm gonna be able to use that to take his back. Isolating the neck, getting a choke. Scenario might also look like this, where boom, I'm knee cutting across, creating another split scenario where I'm opening his knees from the center. And then as I'm isolating the hips, I'm already thinking about how I can start to hand fight and isolate the arms. So we created a full split here with the arms. He cannot defend the center. And because he can't defend the center, I can easily get chokes, submissions here. He can't defend his neck. Or I can drag this arm across. Take it real quick. Maybe turn this into a Kimura. It's gonna be hard to defend because I had a full split scenario. Or maybe an arm bar. So now I'm isolating out the arm. Using compression here with my knees right now. Leverage with the hips. So it's the same scenario. It doesn't matter where we're at. I'm using the grip fight to create tension, compression, splits and drags so that I can create greater isolations, right? Now off balancing or misaligning my partner right here is often more about where he's strong and where he's weak, right? So for instance, in an example like this, he's strong in this direction, but he's weak in that direction, right? So if I'm moving his wrist or his elbow away from his body, he's getting weaker and weaker. The closer he is in, the stronger he's gonna be, all right? So what are the different ways that I can do that? How can I move? You know, my strength is not just here, it's with those tension or compression. So whenever I'm trying to push on one side, it works best if I pull on the other. That's gonna make me stronger. And then I can replace that with my leg if I want to. So I've completely isolated that. I start to create another arm isolation. Once again, just putting him more in a more and more vulnerable situation. So alignment for me, misaligning him, creating a leverage, is about finding the angles that make him weak and to move him in that direction. Sometimes it might be rolling him up to his side. He doesn't want to give me his back or side, so I'm creating that misalignment so that I can take it. Okay, so this is a basic scenario, a basic concept for being able to pass the guard, okay? If my opponent's feet are in play, the first thing that I need to do is win the feet. Basically, I mean, get rid of the feet, make them useless, all right? So I might do that by passing them to the side or through the middle. Now, once I've won the feet, I need to keep the feet won, but I need to be able to let go of them. So I'm gonna move from the feet to the knees. 1, 2. So he's gonna be trying to regain his feet, and I'm gonna use his knees, my forearms, my elbows to block to not allow him to regain the feet, all right? Now, once I've won the knees, the feet, and then the knees, I'm gonna start to work towards the hips. Pinching my knees around the hips here. So I've won the feet, the knees, and now the hips. Lastly, I'm gonna focus on the upper body. Somehow winning the upper body, all right? So here I've created half of a split. I have a head and arm isolation position. This is putting me more and more in a dominant position. But this is the process for passing the guard, all right? Anytime I'm passing the guard. Doesn't matter how I do it, I'm gonna do the same thing. I win the feet, win the knees, win the hips, win the upper body. Win the feet, win the knees, win the hips, win the upper body. I'm down at close guard. It's the same process, but right now his feet are behind me. All right, so in a sense, I've already passed the feet. So from here, I need to be able to open the guard up. So I'm focusing on the knees because I can't focus on the feet. Boom. But I need to block the knees, staple the leg. Now I need to focus on the hips, win the hips, and then start to focus on the upper body without losing anything else. Everything is always defending the other. So once I've passed the feet, I keep past the feet. Once I pass the knees, I keep past the knees. Once I keep past the hips, I keep past the hips, right? So at this point, he shouldn't be able to easily recover the knees or the feet or the hips. So it's always that same process. And if you use that process for your methods of passing the guard, if you're thinking about that process, I guarantee that your efficiency in passing the guard will be much better. So if I am here and I don't win the feet, it's going to be very difficult to pass the guard. Now, if I go like this, and I'm just kind of like tossing the legs aside, and I'm trying to go from the feet to the hips, and I didn't ever control the knees, it's going to be easier for him to recover. But if I'm going to do something like a leg toss, here, I want to block the knee as soon as possible. So as he's trying to recover the knee, look, I'm blocking him, cutting in, until I can get to the hips. I can't jump from feet to hips. I got to go feet, knees, hips, upper body. So with all of that said, the reverse is what he wants. If we're here, you could stand up, and he wins my feet. One of my main objectives is to get my feet back in play. They don't have to go to the same spot, but they need to get in play. So I start to use foot hooks from different angles. This is how all the other guards are created because of this concept. Once the feet are won, we need to put them back into play somehow. And they can move, but I'm trying to keep my feet in play. If he passes the feet and passes the knees, go up and down, turn this way. I need to go in reverse. I need to win the knee back. Once I win the knees back, I can start to focus back on the feet again. And win the feet back. If he wins the hips, he's in a full mount position. First thing I need to do is win my hips back. Once my hips escape, I can start to escape the knees. Once I escape the knees, I can begin using the feet effectively again. It would be the same thing if we're in crossbody position. So here he's won the feet, the knees, and the hips. So I want to try to get my hips back into play. Get off my back, get my hips out. That's going to allow me to start to win my knees back, and then my feet. All right, so this is the process for passing and recovering the guard position. Okay, just how in the guard position, there's a process for passing the guard and a process for recovering the guard. When the feet, when the knees, when the hips, when the upper body. Recover the feet, or recover the hips, the knees, the feet, right? It's the same thing in these kind of situations where maybe a partner's trying to escape or stand up or things like that, right? So if I'm here like this, and let's just say bases on his hands and feet for a second, like this. If he's on his hands and feet, I would much rather him be on his knees and forearms. So I'm gonna break him back down. Boom. Get a knee to the mat, break a forearm. Go ahead and go to your hands again. If his hands are on the mat and his forearms are off the mat, I'm gonna try to break that down and get his forearm on the mat. So if I get his forearm or elbow on the mat and I get his knee on the mat, now I would rather have his shoulder and his hips on the mat. So my next phase is gonna be to, maybe I'll block that far side leg as I push on the elbow and drag him to his shoulder and hip. Bang, and we're here. Now once I get his shoulder and hip on the mat, he's still on his side. I would always rather have him be flat, so my next phase is try to flatten him out. And now that I have him flattened out, I can actually finalize him here. Because in this scenario, I already have a head and arm isolation. So it goes in reverse if he's trying to get up. If he's on his back, he wants to try to get to his side. If he's on his side, he wants to try to get to his knees and elbows. If he's on his knees and elbows, he wants to try to get to his hands and feet. And if he's on his hands and feet, he wants to try to get to his feet. Like this, right? So there's a process for getting up and a process for breaking down. And if we just do this drill like this and I say, you know, I want Brayson to try to stand up and I want me to try to keep him down, and I'm not thinking about that process, I'm not going to be as effective. Because I know here, in this situation, if he goes to his hands, I know exactly what I'm trying to do next. And there's many different ways to do this. I'm not thinking about a technique, I'm thinking about an objective. The objective is to get his elbows back on the mat. Right? And if he's able to maybe step up on a foot over there, right? I don't like that. I'd rather have his knee on the mat. And if I can't put that knee on the mat, I might still be able to put him on his side. I'm thinking about what's the easiest to break him down. Now, if he's on his side, I'm thinking not about a specific technique. I'm just thinking about how am I going to get his shoulders back on the mat. So here I could cup a shoulder, and that's going to allow me to pull so I can create tension and pressure to flatten him back out. But again, for him, he's thinking, I'm on my back. How am I going to get to my side? So he's fighting to get to his side. He's on his side. He's thinking, how am I going to get to my elbows and knees? See that? And this is just going to be back and forth. Boom. Breaking down and posturing up all the time. If he gets to his hands, I want him back on his elbow, right? If his elbow's down, he wants to be back on his hands. And if he can step up here with a knee under his chest, he's got good alignment. Now he's pretty strong. He could stand straight up here if I'm just holding him. But if we go back a step, it might be hard to drive in at this point, but it might be easier to pull back. Like this. Okay, so this is a constant game that we play for the guy on the bottom trying to get back up, or the guy on the top trying to hold down. We have to get good at this process and understand that it comes in phases. It's not just hold him down or get up. There's the phases to getting up, and there's phases to breaking down, right? Now, if I was in the closed guard, we'll say real fast. And so we have Brayson flat on his back. Let's say he starts working up to his side. I don't want him on his side. I want him on his back, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to start breaking that back down again. I'm going to win the inside. Maybe do that again. Get your foot to my hip like you're backing out. All right, so he's here. He's starting to back away from me. So he's got his feet in play, knees. He's won all that again. So I need to be thinking about that. But I'm also thinking now about how I'm breaking his posture down. So if we're here like this, I need to win the feet because I can't quite get to the hand the way that I want to. Let's say you maybe escape to your knee, like that. So in a scenario like this, I'm thinking, oh, he got to his knee. I want to get him back to his hips. Boom. That also helped me win the feet. and I'm winning the knee, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the knee and block that, right? If he fights up to his forearms, he's still fighting, and I'm gonna get him back down, bang, until we can flatten him out. So this is just a consistent process, and with that process, we can create a lot of different games. Okay, so terminology, I just want to talk about stapling real quick. Stapling is when we're using our foot and knee maybe to pin a leg to the mat. So I'm stapling the leg to the mat here, stapling the leg to the mat here, stapling the arm to the mat here, and here. So just terminology when talking. Using that word stapling is a good word that creates a vision of clamping down on something and pinning it to the ground. So anytime that you can use that, that's a good word to use. Another one is kickstand, creating kickstands. So if I'm in mount position, for instance, and he tries to bump me that way, this is my kickstand here, right? Other side, kickstand. Turn this way. Sometimes that might be my knee. Let's say I'm over here and I can't get my arm out, and he goes to knock me that way. I create a kickstand with my knee. I use the floating hooks. My floating hooks, I can create kickstands on either side. So as he bumps me that way, boom, I float that knee out and create my kickstand. My kickstand is always going to be how I maintain my base on top. He's trying to always get rid of my kickstands, right? If I can keep a kickstand, I can keep my base. If he can get rid of my kickstand, he can get rid of my base. That's the same thing as we were talking about earlier with misalignment. If I turn this way, for instance, if my shoulder passes my wrist on this side, just trap it like that once, boom, I'm gonna go to that side. But if I can reset, I won't. But if he can prevent me from resetting, he's gonna win. So it's that same concept even on the ground.